5,000 children were dead. Not soldiers, not criminals, not rebels hiding behind weapons or ideology. Children. The words appeared first as a transmission code, cold, official, emotionless. Then the images followed. Across Earth and every human colony, screens activated without permission. Cities paused. Ships drifting in orbit froze mid-course. Classrooms went silent. Factories stopped humming. Even battle stations went dark as the same message forced its way into every frequency known to humanity. A symbol filled the screens. A black crown encircled by a ring of stars. The mark of the cosmic empire. For a moment, no one spoke. Not because they were ordered into silence, but because the human mind refused to process what it was seeing. Then the broadcast began. The voice of the cosmic emperor was calm, smooth, almost bored. It was translated instantly into every human language, yet somehow it sounded identical in all of them. Detached, superior, final. Let this stand as an example, the emperor said. Defiance carries consequences. The first image showed a city, or would have been a city, a human colony world named Ilias Minor, once home to nearly 3 million people. It had been known for its open skies, floating schools, and planetary parks built specifically for children. Humanity had proudly called it the safest world ever built. Now it was ash. The camera drifted slowly across the ruins. Melted towers, cracked ground glowing faintly from orbital bombardment. No fires burned. There was nothing left to burn. Then the camera descended. It stopped at a structure that humans instantly recognized. A school, or rather, the remains of one. The walls were gone. The roof had collapsed inward. Small desks lay scattered like broken toys. Charred backpacks rested where children had dropped them while trying to run. The emperor's voice continued, utterly unshaken. 5,000 juvenile humans were present at the education sector when compliance forces arrived. The broadcast paused, as if allowing the number to sink in. On Earth, a woman dropped to her knees in a crowded transit station. She screamed without sound, clutching her chest as if her heart were being torn out from inside. On Mars, a security officer ripped off his helmet and vomited onto the floor. On Luna, a classroom of children, alive, breathing, stared at the screen as the image shifted to something far worse. Body bags, small ones, lined in perfect rows. The emperor spoke again. They were warned. Your species was warned. Human leaders had received the ultimatum weeks ago. Kneel, pay tribute, surrender military autonomy, or be corrected. Humanity had asked for time, for negotiation, for proof. The Empire had answered with fire. The screen changed to show a close-up image of a child's hand, half buried in gray dust. A bracelet, plastic, colorful, was still wrapped around the wrist. On it were 3 words, written in a child's uneven handwriting. I love Mom. The broadcast cut abruptly. Silence followed. Not a single sound echoed across human space. No screaming, no shouting, no panic, just silence. It lasted 12 seconds. Then the screaming began. Across Earth, riots ignited without planning. People smashed screens, not because they were angry at technology, but because they wanted the images to stop existing. In hospitals, parents collapsed as doctors restrained them. On distant colonies, emergency channels overflowed with names. Parents desperately searching for children who would never answer. But the worst silence of all came from Earth's leadership. The United Human Assembly, a body formed after humanity first reached the stars, convened an emergency session within minutes. Hundreds of representatives appeared as holograms, their faces pale, their voices trembling. No one argued. No one debated. No one asked for procedure. They all knew. This was not an attack. It was a message. And messages demanded answers. Admiral Cale Renwick stood at the center of the chamber. He had commanded fleets. He had watched planets burn during humanity's early wars. He had ordered strikes that killed thousands. But he had never looked old before. Now he looked ancient. They killed children, he said quietly. No one responded. They didn't miss, Renwick continued. They didn't miss fire. They targeted a school zone during local learning hours. A senator finally spoke, her voice shaking. The Emperor wants fear. Renwick shook his head slowly. No, fear fades. He raised his eyes, burning with something far darker. He wants submission. The chamber fell into deeper silence. Human history was filled with war. Humanity was not innocent. But there had always been lines drawn in blood and sworn upon memory. Children were sacred. Even pirates knew that. Even tyrants pretended to care. The cosmic empire had not pretended. They had crossed a line so ancient that every human instinct screamed in the same direction. On Earth, military AI systems began recording anomalies. Heart rate spikes, adrenal responses, cognitive stress patterns across billions of humans. The data was unprecedented. Humanity was not afraid. Humanity was angry. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in a facility older than the United Human Assembly itself, a room that officially did not exist came alive. Lights flickered on. Consoles activated. Long-dormant systems hummed for the first time in decades. A single phrase echoed through the chamber as ancient protocols unlocked. Emergency doctrine. Total response. At the center of the room stood a sealed pillar. It was black, smooth, and unmarked, except for one word engraved into its surface. A word that had not been spoken aloud since humanity first left Earth. A word that meant only one thing: war. On the Emperor's flagship, light years away, celebrations were already underway. Nobles toasted efficiency. Generals praised precision. Advisors spoke confidently of how quickly the humans would kneel now that their emotional weaknesses had been exploited. The Emperor listened in silence. He felt nothing. To him, it had been simple mathematics. 5,000 lives to save trillions of imperial subjects from rebellion. Acceptable. Necessary. Logical. A junior aide approached carefully. Your Radiance, human communications have ceased. No protests. No official reply. The Emperor smiled faintly. As predicted, he said, "They're processing loss." He leaned back on his throne, fingers tapping calmly. Soon they will beg. But across human space, something far more dangerous than begging was happening. Humanity was remembering who it had once been. Before diplomacy, before councils, before restraint, parents sat beside empty beds and did not cry anymore. Soldiers stared at recruitment screens and pressed enlist without hesitation. Scientists reopened sealed archives. Engineers bypassed ethical locks. And somewhere deep within the human psyche, a switch flipped, one that evolution itself had built long before stars were ever reached. Protect the young. Punish the threat, no matter the cost. 12 hours after the massacre, a single human transmission left Earth. No declaration, no explanation, no demands. Just one word. Short, ancient, final. The cosmic empire would hear it soon. And when they did, the galaxy would never be the same. The cosmic empire waited. That was what it had always done after punishment. Waited for screams, protests, desperate negotiations. Every species reacted the same way when properly corrected. First came outrage, then fear, then surrender. But with humanity, nothing came. No riots broadcast across interstellar channels. No emotional appeals from human diplomats. No threats, no speeches, no declarations of war. Just silence. At first, the Imperial analysts celebrated it. They are broken, one advisor declared confidently. Psychological collapse is underway. The Emperor nodded once, barely listening. His gaze remained fixed on the star map hovering before him, where human space glowed faintly. Small, fragile, insignificant. Prepare the tribute fleets, he said calmly. They will respond soon. But hours passed, then days, and still nothing. No official reply from Earth. No movement of human diplomatic vessels. No emergency pleas. What unsettled the Empire wasn't the lack of response. It was the lack of noise. Human space did not erupt into chaos as expected. There were no mass evacuations detected. No panicked civilian traffic flooding hyperspace lanes. Instead, something else appeared on Imperial sensors. Order. Military traffic increased, but it was controlled. Civilian channels went quiet, but not erratic. Factories did not shut down, they retooled. An Imperial intelligence officer frowned at his console. "Your Radiance," he said carefully, "human industrial output is rising. Across all core worlds." The Emperor finally looked up. "Rising," he repeated. "Yes. Shipyards, weapon foundries, research complexes, all operating beyond predicted capacity." Another officer stepped forward. "They're not broadcasting any propaganda. No morale messaging. No threats." The Emperor's fingers paused mid-tap. "Explain," he commanded. The officer swallowed. "They are acting as if they do not need to convince anyone." That was the first crack. Across the Empire, long-range observation posts began reporting strange behavior. Human warships were not forming visible armadas. Instead, small fleets vanished into classified corridors of space. Paths even Imperial cartography had marked as unstable or forbidden. Scouts sent to investigate did not return. At first, Imperial command assumed malfunction. Then they assumed sabotage. Then, something far worse. Fear. On Earth, the silence was deliberate. The United Human Assembly did not meet again in public. No speeches were given. No votes were broadcast. The public saw no leaders standing behind flags or podiums. Instead, something ancient replaced democracy. The war councils. They were not elected. They were remembered. Former admirals recalled from retirement. Scientists whose research had once been deemed too extreme. Strategists who had designed wars humanity swore it would never fight again. Old names resurfaced in classified files. Old doctrines were unsealed. One phrase echoed through every secure channel. No half measures. Humanity had learned, painfully, that mercy offered to monsters was often mistaken for weakness. This time, there would be no misunderstanding. On Luna, deep beneath a cratered surface, engineers reopened vaults sealed since the first expansion wars. Inside were weapons humanity had built but never used. Not because they couldn't, because they were afraid of what those weapons would turn them into. Now, fear had changed sides. A technician stared at an ancient schematic glowing before her. "This was banned," she whispered. Her supervisor didn't look up. So was killing children. On Mars, soldiers trained without banners, without speeches. No chants, no patriotic music, just drills. Silent, relentless, precise. Recruits weren't told what they were preparing for. They didn't need to be. Everyone had seen the broadcast. Every human carried the same image burned into their memory. 5,000 children. The Empire noticed another anomaly on day 4. Human communications returned, but not like before. No chatter, no open frequencies, no civilian traffic. Instead, a single encrypted signal pulsed through known galactic relays, so dense, so layered, that Imperial decryption systems struggled just to identify its structure. It wasn't a message. It was a key. Imperial codebreakers worked for hours, then days. Entire intelligence divisions were reassigned. Finally, one analyst froze. "Your Radiance," she said slowly. "This is not meant for us." The Emperor narrowed his eyes. "Explain." "It's internal. A synchronization signal. They're aligning systems across their entire civilization." The Emperor rose from his throne for the first time since the massacre. Aligning for what? The analyst hesitated. War. The word echoed too loudly in the chamber. Impossible. Humanity was young, fragmented, politically divided. Their military doctrine relied on alliances and restraint. They were not built for total war, or so the Empire had believed. Imperial scouts, sent toward the edge of human space, finally returned, damaged, silent, drifting. When recovered, their data cores revealed something chilling. Human border defenses were gone. Not destroyed. Gone. No mines. No stations. No patrols. It was as if humanity had opened the door and stepped back. A trap so obvious it felt insulting. And yet, Imperial commanders argued fiercely. It's deception. It's bait. They want us to strike first. The Emperor listened, then dismissed them. Humans lack the capacity for strategic patience, he declared. They're emotional. They will lash out. But another report arrived. Human civilian evacuations had quietly completed weeks ahead of projected timelines. Entire systems cleared, not in panic, in silence. The Emperor's confidence wavered. On Earth, the war councils convened one final time. Admiral Renwick stood again, but this time his voice did not tremble. "They think we are angry," he said. Several council members exchanged grim looks. "We are not," Renwick continued. "Anger burns hot and dies quickly." He paused. "We are resolved." A general leaned forward. "When do we respond?" Renwick turned to a single display. It showed the image of the Imperial crown, the same one from the massacre broadcast. "When they hear the word," he said, "they'll know." Across human space, fleets completed final checks. Weapons powered up quietly. Artificial intelligences were unchained from ethical governors. Orders were issued without flourish, without emotion. And, at the center of it all, a single transmission was prepared. No explanation. No justification. Just one word. On the 7th day after the massacre, the Emperor sat in his throne room, staring at reports he no longer trusted. Human space remained silent. Too silent. Then, without warning, every Imperial screen activated at once. Not hacked. Not forced. Accepted. The Emperor recognized the protocol immediately. Ancient. Formal. Universal. A declaration channel. The room fell silent as a single word appeared in stark white symbols, translated instantly into every Imperial language. One word. Short. Simple. Human. The Emperor read it, and for the first time in his immortal reign, he felt fear. The word had been spoken. One word. Short. Human. Deadly. And yet, it carried the weight of an entire civilization's wrath. The Cosmic Empire's communications officers froze at their consoles. Their instruments screamed warnings, but no one had time to interpret the signals. Every channel across Imperial space lit up with a cascade of anomalies. Ships reported navigation system failures. Satellites blinked out of existence. Even automated defense turrets aimed at the void without reason or target. The Emperor's throne room, once a place of absolute control, descended into chaos. Advisors yelled, scribes dropped their quills, and generals attempted to issue commands, but nothing worked. Every piece of Imperial machinery, every calculated protocol, seemed to resist them. The Emperor himself leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What is this?" he demanded. "Explain." A junior officer, trembling, finally spoke. "Your Radiance? It's a coordinated activation. Human fleets, they're all moving simultaneously. But not in formation, they're reorganizing at speeds and patterns we cannot predict." The Emperor slammed his fist on the console. "Impossible. Every fleet should follow protocols. Every system should obey our logic. But they're not obeying any of our logic," the officer said, voice barely above a whisper. The Emperor rose, towering over the room, his shadow casting long over terrified advisors. "Then destroy them." But by the time his command reached the fleet commanders, the humans had already moved. Every sector of human space erupted in a coordinated strike like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The first targets were minor outposts, defense stations humanity had never bothered to hide. And yet, when Imperial scouts responded, they found empty shells. The defenses had been stripped, but not destroyed. Mines, weapons caches, and tactical grids vanished in a precision that only a civilization willing to die for vengeance could achieve. The humans had chosen their battlefield, and now they were everywhere at once. On the Imperial flagship, sensors detected the first wave. Hundreds of human warships emerged from previously unknown hyperspace corridors, striking with surgical precision. The Empire's pride, the flagship battle cruisers, were obliterated before they could even fire a shot. Energy shields flared and fizzled. Plasma cannons misfired. Torpedoes exploded mid-launch. This is impossible," shouted one admiral. "They're weapons. They are beyond our comprehension." The Emperor's expression finally faltered. For the first time in centuries, he looked uncertain. The humans weren't just attacking. They were anticipating every move, every strike, every countermeasure, every tactical maneuver the Empire had perfected for eons was already accounted for, countered, or avoided. At the same time, messages arrived from occupied systems. Colonies that had once welcomed imperial administrators now stood empty, sabotaged from within. Industrial centers, weapons factories, and shipyards were dismantled in secret hours before the human fleets arrived, leaving the Empire's supply lines crippled before the first battle could begin. The Emperor's fleet attempted to regroup, but the humans had already established control over the battle grid. Communications were jammed. Defense protocols disabled. Even the Empire's most advanced artificial intelligences were confused, as if human ingenuity had rewritten the very rules of engagement. And then came the first orbital strikes. Human ships descended from orbit like ghosts, invisible until they erupted into light. Energy beams carved through Imperial armor like it was paper. Explosions tore through the vacuum of space, scattering debris in slow, burning arcs. Flags of the Empire, once symbols of invincibility, were obliterated. Entire fleets disintegrated before reinforcements could arrive. In one strike alone, a sector containing 3 of the Empire's largest war stations vanished from the charts. The Emperor watched in disbelief as the readings confirmed it. Billions of tons of ships, weapons, and supplies gone. Vaporized. For centuries, the Empire had considered itself untouchable. Every rebellion had been crushed, every challenger annihilated. And now, humanity had proven that they were not merely challengers. They were an unstoppable force of precision and wrath. Admiral Kale Renwick stood on the bridge of the human flagship, silent as the displays flickered with enemy positions. His crew moved like a single organism, executing orders with efficiency and calm. No celebrations, no shouting, just the cold, relentless march of a civilization that had been pushed beyond mercy. "Report," Renwick said. "Imperial forces are fragmented," his tactical officer replied. "They are retreating. Command communications are collapsing. Targeted orbital defenses are offline." Renwick nodded. "Good. Maintain the pressure. Hit every supply line. Spare nothing. Every resource they believe is secure is now a target." Across the galaxy, human colonies joined the strike in perfect synchronization. Civilian ships converted to warships. Factories produced weapons at speeds that even the Empire could not track. Engineers bypassed safety protocols to unleash destructive technologies long prohibited for ethical reasons. Humanity's fury was total, absolute, and terrifyingly precise. The Emperor finally realized the enormity of the situation. The humans weren't just fighting, they were executing a war philosophy the Empire had never anticipated. Their strategy wasn't to destroy the enemy piece by piece. Their goal was annihilation. Total, coordinated, unrelenting annihilation. Reports flooded the throne room. Imperial generals were dead or stranded in space. Entire sectors were gone. Spies and reconnaissance drones had been turned against their own masters. Every single Imperial asset that could move was being systematically neutralized. The Emperor's advisors, once confident, now cowered. "Your Radiance," one stammered, they are everywhere at once. "Our fleets cannot respond. Our defenses, our tactics, nothing works." The Emperor's eyes glowed faintly. Rage, pride, and disbelief warred across his features. "Then they will pay," he whispered. "Every world they hold, every system, they will burn." But even as he spoke, the humans anticipated this. Advanced long-range strikes disabled Imperial war stations before they could launch counterattacks. Communications hubs were obliterated. Supply chains disintegrated. Humanity moved faster than the Empire could process. Everywhere, humans were exacting vengeance. And yet, they did it with control. There was no chaos, no panic, just relentless, surgical retribution. In the middle of it all, Renwick issued a simple command that would echo across history. "Do not stop. Do not negotiate. Do not fear. Finish what they started with us. Finish it completely." By the end of the first day of strikes, the Empire's confidence had shattered. Flags fell. Thrones were abandoned. Entire sectors were cut off from command. And yet the humans did not pause. They were not celebrating. They were preparing for the next stage. For the first time in the history of the galaxy, an empire that had ruled for thousands of years felt the cold grip of fear, and they knew, instinctively, that the humans would not stop until every last one of them was brought low. Renwick watched the battlefield unfold, silent. He did not need to issue speeches or rally cries. Humanity had remembered the broadcast, the massacre of their children, the single word that had ignited this inferno. It was enough, and the Empire had just realized they had awakened something they could not control. The stars themselves seemed to tremble. Humanity had struck first, and the galaxy was beginning to realize that the strike was only the beginning. By the third day, Imperial analysts could no longer argue that humans were predictable. Every move, every calculation, every tactic that the Empire relied upon had been anticipated and nullified. Reports flooded the Emperor's throne room. Ships that had been considered the pride of Imperial engineering, dreadnoughts, carriers, orbital fortresses, were either destroyed or rendered useless. Defense networks meant to hold entire systems in check collapsed in hours. And still, humanity pressed forward. On Earth, Admiral Cale Renwick observed the strategic grid as fleets moved with terrifying precision. Entire sectors were simultaneously attacked, not in chaotic fury, but in perfect synchronization. Systems that the Empire had thought untouchable now burned. "This isn't a war," Renwick said softly. "It's a purge." Across human space, weapons factories worked at full capacity. Engineers bypassed ethical limits, recalibrating orbital bombardment systems and kinetic cannons for maximum destruction. Scientists refined targeting protocols, ensuring that every shot counted. Every strike was precise, surgical, and devastating. The Emperor's throne room, once a place of unchallenged authority, descended into chaos. Generals argued over strategy, their voices overlapping. Advisors pleaded for caution, yet no solution existed. Every attempt at countermeasure failed before it could even be executed. One officer, desperate, shouted, "Your Radiance, we cannot stop them. They anticipate everything. Every fleet, every weapon, every station gone." The Emperor, usually calm and imperious, slammed his fist against the console. "Then we adapt." But adaptation was not enough. Humanity had already outpaced the Empire in both strategy and execution. In orbit above the former colony of Ilios Minor, a human fleet prepared for the next strike. Ships hovered in perfect formation, but invisible to the Empire's scanners. Smaller tactical units slipped through unnoticed corridors of space. Each unit carried advanced weaponry capable of devastating entire planetary defense grids. A tactical officer reported, "All targets confirmed. Orbital defenses bypassed. Command centers ready to neutralize." Renwick nodded. "Execute. No mercy." The first strike hit within seconds. Defense turrets erupted in fire, annihilating the Empire's frontline ships. Explosions tore through the vacuum, debris scattering like shooting stars. Communication arrays went dark. Systems that the Empire had considered invulnerable were now reduced to rubble. The Emperor's advisors whispered urgently among themselves. "They cannot possibly sustain this," one said. "Their losses must be enormous." Another countered, "Our own losses are catastrophic. Entire fleets are lost. Thousands of our soldiers dead." The Emperor stood silent, watching the data streams. His confidence was cracking. The humans were not just fighting. They were executing a plan that no algorithm, no centuries of experience, could predict. On Earth, the war councils convened silently. No speeches were given. No declarations of glory. Only action. Renwick studied the battle maps, his face grim but resolute. Every Imperial supply line is compromised. Every fleet stranded. Their communications fragmented. By the time they understand what's happening, it will be too late. Engineers activated weapons systems long forbidden for use. planetary shields were recalibrated to allow maximum offensive capability. Orbital bombardments were primed to reduce entire city grids to ash if necessary. Every tool humanity had ever feared using in warfare was now a weapon, and every weapon was aimed with lethal intent. The first human strike wave was complete. The results were devastating. Imperial fleets that had once symbolized the strength of the Empire were shattered. Thousands of soldiers were dead. Entire sectors of space, rich in resources and industry, were now under human control or neutralized entirely. In the Empire's command centers, panic spread. Officers abandoned stations. Signals were intercepted and turned against them. Supplies vanished. The Emperor realized that humanity had not only attacked, they had systematically dismantled the Empire's capacity to retaliate. He rose from his throne, rage flaring in his eyes. "Send everything," he shouted. "Destroy them. Leave nothing alive." But every counterattack failed. Human forces moved faster than Imperial fleets could respond. They struck from angles no one had anticipated, bypassing defenses, exploiting vulnerabilities, and disappearing before retaliation was possible. Across the galaxy, humans executed what would later be called the Wrath Protocols. Coordinated strikes on supply chains, command centers, orbital stations, and resource hubs. Each strike was meticulously planned, timed, and executed with lethal precision. Even civilian infrastructure was mobilized. Factories converted to war production. Research stations developed advanced weaponry at speeds the Empire could not comprehend. Engineers reprogrammed AI, creating autonomous tactical units capable of operating independently across multiple sectors. The Empire's fleets, once feared, were now scattered. Entire battalions surrendered or were destroyed. Command structures crumbled. Communications failed. The Emperor realized with growing horror that humanity had anticipated not just the attack, but the Empire's reaction to it. And then came the human orbital strikes on the Emperor's home sector. Ships appeared without warning, slipping through previously secure hyperspace corridors. Energy beams tore through fortifications. Star bases, the pride of the Empire, exploded in silent fury. Defense satellites were obliterated. The Emperor's flagship trembled under the impact of the first volleys. Advisors screamed, "We are losing the sector. They are too fast, too precise." Renwick watched from his command center, calm as ever. "Keep the pressure," he instructed. "Every move they make, anticipate. Every target, eliminate. Do not stop." The humans were not merely fighting. They were executing vengeance. Every action reflected the memory of the massacre, the single word that had ignited this war, and the determination that humanity would never bow to tyranny again. By the end of the second day of strikes, entire Imperial sectors had fallen. Supply lines were cut. Communications were fragmented. Fleets were destroyed. The Emperor's confidence, built over centuries, was shattered. Across human space, no celebrations were held. No speeches were made. Humanity moved with the precision of a machine, guided by the fury of civilization that had been pushed beyond mercy. And at the center of it all, one message remained unspoken but clear. The massacre of 5,000 children would not go unanswered. The Empire had never faced defeat like this. Not in 1,000 cycles. Not in 1,000 rebellions. Not against any species anywhere in the galaxy. Yet, here they were, scrambling, terrified, powerless before the wrath of humanity. Reports arrived almost hourly. Entire sectors had fallen. Fleets that once numbered in the thousands were reduced to a handful of drifting wrecks. Supply lines were destroyed. Communication networks, once the pride of Imperial engineering, were in chaos. The Emperor's throne room, a place of centuries-old authority, had become a war chamber of fear. Advisors whispered frantic strategies. Generals argued over impossible tactics. Spies reported entire intelligence divisions compromised. And still the humans advanced. The first attempts to retaliate had failed miserably. Imperial fleets tried to regroup and strike at key human positions. Every attack was anticipated. Every formation broken before weapons could fire. Even the most advanced AI control vessels could not adapt fast enough to human ingenuity. In one brutal strike, a fleet of battle cruisers was lured into a trap near the Veyron Rift. Humans had disguised their movements, using debris fields and decoy transmissions. When the Imperial fleet arrived, hidden human frigates detonated synchronized warheads, creating chain reactions that destroyed the entire armada. Not a single ship escaped. Across the Empire, panic spread. Governors abandoned posts. Soldiers mutinied. Strategic planners were paralyzed by the speed and precision of human attacks. The Emperor, for the first time, considered measures he had long avoided. Secret weapons, forbidden for centuries, were activated. Doomsday devices buried in remote sectors were prepared for launch. Star-killer satellites, capable of obliterating entire planets, were readied. Yet even as these terrible weapons came online, human forces were already moving faster. In orbit above the former colony of Ilias Minor, humans had established a forward command station. From here, they coordinated attacks with terrifying efficiency. Ships struck Imperial installations while simultaneously reinforcing one another. Supply lines were captured, repaired, and turned into weapons depots overnight. Every movement was calculated, every action synchronized. Admiral Kale Renwick observed the tactical grid. His face was calm, unreadable. Every strike, anticipate their response. Every target, destroy it completely. Leave nothing that can harm us, he ordered. On the Imperial flagship, the Emperor watched as his generals and scientists scrambled to respond. Doomsday devices were prepared for launch, and fleets were ordered into defensive formations. But the humans had already predicted this. Small units slipped through hyperspace corridors no one had mapped, disabling weapons systems before they could fire. Star bases meant to control sectors were rendered useless by targeted strikes and sabotage. The Emperor's pride faltered. For the first time, he realized that the humans had not merely reacted. They had planned, anticipated, and executed with precision that defied Imperial comprehension. In one shocking instance, a human strike team infiltrated a supposedly secure Imperial intelligence hub. In minutes, they extracted critical data, sabotaged defensive networks, and left without detection. The Empire had been proud of its secret bases, believing them untouchable. Humanity proved them wrong. The Emperor's council convened urgently. "We must destroy them at any cost," he commanded. "Activate the full arsenal. Every weapon, every fleet. Do not leave a single planet in their hands." Yet even as orders were given, human forces struck again. Dozens of Imperial planets were simultaneously attacked. Orbital defenses were destroyed. Ground installations were neutralized. Supply chains were cut off. The Empire's strength was being annihilated faster than it could respond. In one sector, a massive energy cannon, capable of leveling entire cities, was destroyed by a single human frigate unit. The frigate slipped past multiple patrols, fired a precise shot, and was gone before Imperial forces even realized it existed. The Emperor's anger turned to frustration. "They are humans," he said, voice trembling. "They cannot achieve this." But the reports proved otherwise. Entire fleets were gone. Intelligence networks were compromised. Strategic strongholds were in ruins. And through it all, human forces did not pause. They were relentless. They were precise. They were unstoppable. In the Empire's command center, a young officer approached the Emperor cautiously. "Your Radiance, we may have underestimated them. They are faster, smarter, more coordinated than any species we have faced. Entire sectors are lost." The Emperor's eyes narrowed. "Then we adapt," he said. "We fight harder. We strike deeper. Humanity will learn the cost of defiance." But the humans had already adapted to everything the Empire could throw at them. Their technology, tactics, and strategy had evolved faster than Imperial sensors could track. Fleets were redeployed in unpredictable patterns. Weapons were recalibrated mid-battle. Civilian industries were converted to war production in hours, supporting the relentless human advance. On Earth, the War Council's coordinated attacks across multiple systems. Engineers bypassed ethical safeguards to unleash devastating weapons. Scientists refined targeting protocols, ensuring that every shot destroyed its target. Soldiers moved with disciplined precision, striking fear into the hearts of Imperial commanders. Every human action was calculated. Every attack was executed with surgical accuracy, and all of it was fueled by a single purpose: the memory of the 5,000 children who had been massacred. Imperial morale collapsed. Commanders questioned their orders. Soldiers surrendered rather than fight a war they could not win. Entire sectors switched off communications to avoid being destroyed. The Empire's pride, built over millennia, was crumbling. In the midst of the chaos, Admiral Renwick issued his orders. Do not stop. Do not negotiate. Do not fear. Finish what they started with us. Finish it completely. And so, humanity pressed on. Systems fell, fleets disintegrated, and the Emperor watched helplessly as his empire burned. By the end of the fifth day, the Empire was fractured. Its forces scattered, its defenses crippled, and its confidence shattered. Humanity had proven that it could not be defeated, that it could not be intimidated, and that it would never forgive the massacre of its children. And at the center of it all, one word remained unspoken but understood: revenge. The Emperor thought he had prepared for everything. Every contingency, every rebellion, every species that had ever dared to rise against him. Yet humanity, mere humans, had shattered centuries of confidence in hours. In the heart of Imperial space, the Emperor activated the last line of defense, Project Oblivion, a doomsday weapon buried deep in the core of a lifeless planet. It was capable of annihilating entire star systems in one cataclysmic strike. Imperial scientists had assured him it was unstoppable, untraceable, and unassailable. Prepare it for deployment, the Emperor commanded, his voice cold, controlled, but tinged with the first traces of fear he had ever allowed himself to feel. Send the coordinates to the fleets. Let humanity witness the price of defiance. Imperial warships assembled around the planet, the energy of 1,000 reactors converging to power the weapon. Shields hummed, cannons charged, missiles locked. Every soldier on every ship waited, believing this would finally end the human threat. Far away, the humans watched, but they did not panic. Admiral Cale Renwick stood silently in the command bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching the energy spikes from Imperial space. They have activated something massive, a young officer said nervously. Renwick's eyes were steady. Good, he replied. That means it's time. Human fleets across multiple sectors synchronized their movements. Small, agile ships slipped through interdiction corridors, jamming communications and sabotaging Imperial sensors. Engineers redirected the energy flows of human ships to create countercharges, ensuring that when the doomsday weapon fired, it would meet resistance far beyond Imperial expectations. The first salvo arrived. The planet core trembled. Massive beams of energy shot into the void, intended to reduce entire star systems to nothing. The Empire believed humanity would be vaporized instantly, but the humans were ready. Fleets of counter-drone frigates intercepted the beams, fragmenting them into harmless plasma clouds. Orbital shields, recalibrated in real time by AI-guided tactical algorithms, absorbed impacts and redirected destructive energy back toward attacking warships. Imperial calculations had failed to account for human improvisation. The first wave of Imperial warships was obliterated by the very weapon they thought would secure victory. Collateral energy rebounds tore through the fleet as human engineers manipulated the environment around the weapon. Within minutes, hundreds of ships, each worth billions in resources, had been destroyed. On the Emperor's throne ship, alarms blared. Generals screamed. Commanders ran frantic calculations, only to find that every projection predicted the same outcome. Humanity was not just surviving. They were thriving under pressure. Renwick's voice echoed through the human fleet. Advance. No mercy. Every target, every stronghold, every command center. Finish what they began with Ilias Minor. Make them understand the cost of what they did. Human ships surged forward. Fleets split and recombined, striking multiple Imperial sectors simultaneously. Massive orbital stations, once thought impregnable, were destroyed with pinpoint precision. Defense satellites exploded silently, leaving nothing but debris. The galaxy's most feared empire was in retreat, and there was no rallying point left. The Emperor realized, with a chill that ran through his ancient bones, that he had underestimated the human mind. Their strategy was unlike anything he had ever faced. It was not just vengeance. It was engineering revenge into a weapon. On one remote Imperial colony, human forces landed silently. Ground units neutralized strategic points with efficiency that seemed impossible. Factories producing war materials were dismantled in hours. Supply depots exploded. Soldiers surrendered without resistance as they realized the futility of opposing humans who had no hesitation, no moral restraint, and no fear. Back on the Emperor's flagship, a young aide whispered, "Your Radiance, they anticipated Project Oblivion. They've survived it." The Emperor's eyes widened. "Impossible. Look at the readings, sir. Entire energy grids are stable. Our fleets, they're falling faster than the weapon can reach them. And yet they continue advancing. Rage replaced fear, then destroy them all." But human fleets had already adapted to the Empire's desperation. They divided forces into swarms, attacking multiple fronts while simultaneously exploiting weaknesses in the Imperial fleet formations. Planetary shields were breached, orbital defenses dismantled, starships vaporized. Each human ship operated as part of a larger intelligence, executing orders without hesitation, without error, and without mercy. Renwick's calm voice cut across the battlefield. "Push further. Every weak point is an opportunity. Every Imperial mistake exploited. Advance to the heart of their systems." Civilian colonies joined the war effort. Shipyards and factories once reserved for commerce or research were converted into war production centers overnight. Engineers bypassed ethical restrictions to build devastating weapons. Scientists unleashed tactical AI capable of autonomous strikes, coordinating hundreds of ships simultaneously. Humanity's total mobilization was terrifying in its efficiency and precision. Imperial morale collapsed completely. Officers argued over impossible decisions. Soldiers refused orders when they saw entire fleets destroyed. Command structures fragmented. The Emperor's authority was questioned for the first time. In the midst of chaos, Renwick's fleets approached the Emperor's central system. The first orbital defense arrays were destroyed silently, without announcement. The Emperor's personal fleets were caught in a trap. Massive energy strikes disabled shields and weapons systems in moments. Ships that had been the pride of the Empire were obliterated before reinforcements could arrive. The Emperor watched helplessly as human forces carved a path through his most secure sectors. He realized something even more terrifying. Humans were not just strong. They were relentless, coordinated, and fueled by a purpose no empire had ever faced. A single word echoed through human space, unspoken but understood. Justice. Every strike, every maneuver, every destroyed Imperial asset carried the memory of the children massacred at Ilias Minor. Humanity's wrath was precise, calculated, and unstoppable. By the end of the second day of this phase of the assault, the Empire's remaining fleets were scattered, their sectors in chaos, and their morale broken. The Emperor knew, finally, that Project Oblivion, his last hope, had failed. Humanity had survived, adapted, and used his own weapon against his forces. And somewhere in the heart of the human fleet, Renwick watched the enemy crumble. No celebrations were made. No speeches were given. Humanity's victory was deliberate, methodical, and horrifying to its enemies. The Emperor realized it now. The humans had not just fought back. They had become a force the galaxy would never forget. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The Emperor had unleashed everything. His fleets, his secret weapons. Even Project Oblivion had been activated and survived only to fail. And still, humanity advanced. Every sector that once belonged to the Empire now lay in flames, shattered by precision strikes and relentless human strategy. In the Emperor's central command station, alarms screamed ceaselessly. Holographic displays flickered under the strain of overloaded data streams. Generals shouted orders, only to find that the humans anticipated each move before it was executed. Imperial fleets had become scattered, their coordination in ruins. Supply lines were destroyed. Communications were severed. Satellites burned in orbit. And yet, human forces moved with relentless precision. Admiral Cale Renwick observed the tactical grid from the command bridge of the flagship Indomitable. Ships moved in perfect synchronization, small tactical units slipping into gaps, exploiting weaknesses and neutralizing Imperial strongholds before the enemy could respond. "This is it," Renwick said softly. "The final push. Leave nothing behind." In human-occupied space, fleets had been mobilized to full capacity. Engineers bypassed safety protocols to unleash devastating weapons. Orbital bombardments were calibrated to neutralize entire cities, targeting only military installations, supply depots, and command centers. Every strike was precise, surgical, and deadly. Imperial ships attempted desperate counterattacks. Massive dreadnoughts fired volleys designed to obliterate entire human fleets. Superweapons, long hidden, were deployed in secret sectors, ready to destroy planets if humans dared to approach. But humanity anticipated every move. Electronic countermeasures rendered Imperial targeting systems useless. Small human fleets disabled key weapons platforms before they could fire. AI-guided strike units infiltrated orbital defenses and sabotaged critical infrastructure. The Empire's own weapons were turned against them. In one shocking sequence, a massive Imperial fleet attempted to regroup near the Orion Expanse. Human frigates slipped through hyperspace corridors no one had mapped, striking from behind, while orbital bombardments neutralized defenses. The Empire's pride, dreadnoughts and carriers worth billions, were destroyed before they could return fire. On the Emperor's flagship, panic erupted. Generals shouted, officers dropped to the floor, and scribe assistants frantically attempted to calculate new strategies. But every formula, every plan, every prediction was nullified. Humanity's movements were impossible to anticipate using Imperial logic. "Your Radiance," an officer stammered, "we cannot hold them. Entire sectors have fallen. Our fleets are destroyed." The Emperor's eyes, once cold and unyielding, now glowed with anger and fear. "Then burn it all," he roared. "Destroy every system, every world. If they wish to defy me, they will pay in fire and ash." But humans had already adapted. While the Empire scrambled to unleash destruction, human fleets infiltrated the most heavily fortified sectors, dismantling orbital defense platforms and commandeering weapon systems. Engineers reprogrammed Imperial AI, turning drones, turrets, and automated factories against their former masters. On a remote Imperial colony, ground forces faced human soldiers equipped with technology that exceeded Imperial expectations. Every battle was swift, precise, and devastating. Civilians who had once been neutral were mobilized, operating support systems, maintaining supply chains, and reinforcing front lines. Every human, soldier, or civilian had a role in the total war effort. Even the Emperor's secret doomsday weapons, previously thought untouchable, were neutralized in sequence. Human strike teams had infiltrated their cores, sabotaged energy conduits, and repurposed control systems to explode in safe zones, minimizing civilian collateral while maximizing enemy devastation. The Emperor's pride shattered with each report. Entire fleets were annihilated. Command centers were destroyed. Systems that had once been invincible were now smoking ruins. The humans were not just winning. They were rewriting the rules of war entirely. In orbit above the Emperor's capital, the first human assault fleet arrived. Ships moved in unison, weapons charged, shields calibrated. Orbital defenses fired, attempting to repel the invasion. But human engineers had anticipated trajectories, shield frequencies, and energy dispersal patterns. Imperial weapons misfired, shields collapsed, and fleet after fleet was destroyed in the blink of an eye. Renwick's voice cut through the battle communications. No hesitation. Strike every target, every ship, every station, every command node. Make them understand the cost of what they did to our children. Explosions rocked the Emperor's capital. Massive energy beams carved through orbital stations. Defense satellites erupted, sending debris cascading across the void. Imperial starships exploded in fireballs that illuminated the darkness of space. The Emperor could only watch as his empire burned, unable to intervene. On the surface, human troops stormed ground installations. Engineers disabled planetary shields. Tactical units infiltrated command centers. Supply depots were destroyed. Every Imperial soldier faced a coordinated assault that was impossible to resist. The Emperor realized, too late, that the humans were not motivated by mere revenge. They were driven by a purpose beyond survival, a sacred promise to honor the children lost at Ilias Minor. Every move, every strategy, every strike was executed with the memory of those 5,000 innocent lives burned into human hearts. Even as Imperial fleets attempted desperate retreats, human forces anticipated their courses, intercepting them in hyperspace and neutralizing them before they could regroup. Entire sectors fell. Communication networks failed. Star bases exploded. Command hierarchies crumbled. The Emperor's advisors whispered in terror. They cannot be stopped. Every move we make, they're prepared for. Entire fleets gone. Entire sectors gone. For the first time, the Emperor realized something horrifying. Humanity had not just survived. They had evolved into a force capable of defeating the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known. And they had done it with precision, intelligence, and relentless resolve. Renwick watched from the bridge of his flagship. "Advance," he said calmly. "Every sector, every fleet, every command center. Leave nothing. No celebration, no speeches, only action." The humans were methodical, efficient, unstoppable. And in the heart of the galaxy, the Emperor's throne room finally fell silent. For the first time in millennia, absolute power was shaken. Humanity had proven that no empire, no matter how mighty, could withstand the fury of a civilization defending its children. The stars burned with fire and destruction, but humanity moved forward, silent, relentless, and victorious. The Emperor had underestimated them. The galaxy would never forget the day humanity struck back. And the final word, the unspoken truth that echoed across all space, was clear. Justice had been served. The galaxy was quiet, or at least it should have been. The cosmic empire, the mighty dominion that had ruled for millennia, that had crushed countless rebellions and enslaved worlds with ease, now trembled at a force it could never have imagined: humanity. Admiral Cale Renwick stood aboard the flagship Indomitable, gazing at the battle grid. The stars themselves seemed scorched with the fires of war. Imperial fleets, once uncountable, now lay shattered in drifting wrecks. Orbital stations were nothing more than smoldering ruins. Planets, the pride of the Empire, were reduced to hollowed shells. And yet, the humans did not celebrate. They did not cheer. No music, no speeches, no parades. Humanity moved like a single, unstoppable organism, relentless, disciplined, and determined. "This is it," Renwick said quietly, turning to his officers. "The final push. The Empire must fall today, or their tyranny will rise again elsewhere. Leave nothing that can threaten the galaxy again." On the Imperial throne world, the Emperor's once absolute control had evaporated. His advisors whispered urgently, generals pleaded, spies ran frantic calculations, but it was too late. Humanity had anticipated everything. Every secret weapon, every doomsday device, every hidden fleet had been neutralized. The Emperor's rage and desperation became palpable. "Send everything remaining. Destroy them all," he roared, pounding the throne. But nothing worked. Human fleets moved faster than Imperial sensors could detect, striking from angles no one could predict. The remnants of Imperial fleets were systematically hunted down, crippled, and eliminated. Command centers fell one after another. Communication grids collapsed. Even the Emperor's personal security was infiltrated by human strike teams that operated with surgical precision. In orbit above the throne world, the first human assault fleet arrived. Ships slipped through the defenses undetected, weapons calibrated for maximum effect. Orbital batteries fired, but human countermeasures rendered them useless. In minutes, Imperial warships exploded in brilliant, silent arcs of fire. Satellites fell. Star bases were obliterated. On the planet's surface, human forces stormed the Emperor's palace. Tactical units moved like shadows, bypassing patrols, disarming automated defenses, and neutralizing strategic targets. Ground troops, engineers, and special operatives worked in perfect synchronization, leaving the Imperial defenders overwhelmed and demoralized. Admiral Renwick gave the order, "Do not stop. Every officer, every soldier, every weapon must be neutralized. The Empire ends today." Human precision was absolute. The Emperor's guards fell one by one. Energy shields were ripped apart. Security systems were hacked and reversed. The palace trembled under the barrage, yet the humans moved without haste, without error, and without hesitation. For the first time in history, the Emperor felt fear. He realized that humanity had done what no one else could. They had turned grief, rage, and the memory of 5,000 murdered children into a weapon more devastating than any fleet, any doomsday device, any empire's might. Renwick's fleet had surrounded the palace. Tactical drones neutralized surface defenses. Orbital bombardments softened strategic positions without harming captured civilians. Every move was calculated, every step methodical. Humanity's victory was complete, but deliberate, swift, precise, and just. The Emperor's advisors pleaded for mercy. "Your Radiance, perhaps they will negotiate, perhaps we can surrender." But the Emperor knew it was too late. Humanity would not negotiate. They did not need to. Humanity had transcended diplomacy, patience, and fear. They were now the ultimate power in the galaxy. And then it happened. The Emperor's flagship was boarded simultaneously by multiple human strike teams. Ground forces breached the palace. Energy shields faltered. Starships fell silent. Communication channels went dark. Every attempt to counterattack was neutralized instantly. Renwick entered the Emperor's throne room personally. His steps were quiet, but every officer present felt the weight of humanity's fury. The Emperor rose, furious and defiant. "You dare," he began. Renwick raised a hand. "You slaughtered 5,000 innocent children," he said, his voice calm, cold, and resolute. "You expected fear. You expected submission. You expected us to beg. You forgot one thing. Humans never forgive." A single word left Renwick's lips. One word. The Emperor's expression froze. His advisors gasped. His fleet trembled at the very thought. Justice. The word echoed across the throne room, across the planet, across the galaxy. It carried the memory of every child, every sacrifice, every act of cruelty the Empire had committed. It carried the weight of a civilization that refused to be cowed. And with it, the Empire fell. Massive explosions ripped through the throne world as Renwick's forces neutralized the final defenses. The Emperor's fleets were destroyed in orbit. Command centers collapsed. Entire star systems were liberated simultaneously by human forces. The galaxy's most feared empire was no more. On the surface, civilians cheered quietly, not in celebration of destruction, but in relief and liberation. The war was over. Humanity had struck, and the Empire had been shattered. Renwick looked across the battlefield. No one celebrated. No one shouted. Humanity moved silently, efficiently, decisively. The war was over, but the victory was not for glory. It was for justice, for honor, for the memory of the children who had been massacred. And as the dust settled across the galaxy, one truth became clear. No empire, no matter how mighty, no matter how ancient, could withstand the full fury of a civilization defending its own. The stars themselves seemed to whisper it, shining brighter as if in acknowledgement. Humanity had proven it. The emperor was gone, his throne destroyed, his fleets obliterated, his empire reduced to ruins. And humanity, silent, relentless, victorious, had claimed the galaxy, not for conquest, not for greed, but for justice. The memory of 5,000 children had ignited a fury the cosmos would never forget. And in the silence that followed, the universe knew one simple, unshakable truth. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity does not forget. And humanity never yields. The galaxy had changed forever.